Hi, everyone. My name is Megan Schrade, and I am a coach here in the United States with the ADHD Advocate. We're talking this week about academics and executive function. And today I wanted to explain a little bit about situational awareness and how that relates to our executive function skills. I wanted to share a couple slides with you today that talk about that situational awareness and kind of share a couple stories to illustrate that point for you. So I'll share my screen. There we go. So, situational awareness can be defined as the perception of environmental elements and events with respect to time or space, the comprehension of their meaning, and the projection of their future status. It also includes the understanding of oneself in the environment and how one relates and operates within that environment. So it's really talking about the understanding of what's happening around us, what our role is in that environment, and what we are supposed to do. So you can see how that really relates to executive function skills. How are we supposed to execute and do what we're supposed to do in the environment? Um, I know Stephanie spoke yesterday about ADHD and how we have an interest-based nervous system as opposed to an importance-based nervous system. So when we enter a given situation, we are sort of taking stock of what is happening around us. And someone with maybe higher executive function skills is paying attention to what is important in that environment. Someone with lower executive function skills or more challenges in that area might be looking at whatever interests them in that environment. So I wanted to give you an example of that through a picture that is often shown in trainings. I took a training from Sarah Ward. She is an SLP here in the United States who's done extensive work with executive functions. And she provides different trainings on executive function skills and building executive function skills. And she uses this image to really give a concrete example of how that situational awareness affects people with good executive function or less challenges there versus somebody who has more challenges with executive function. So I will share the image. As you see here, it is a grocery store, an image of a produce section in a grocery store. And I'd like to just share a little story about my children. So I am an ADHD coach. I have ADHD myself. And all three of my children have been diagnosed with ADHD as well. However, I have one daughter whose executive function skills are she's a little less challenged with that. And my son is a little more challenged. So I showed them this picture. And just like Sarah Ward was explaining in her training, she asks kids, how is this space organized? And my daughter looked at the picture for a minute and she said, well, it's organized, the peppers are organized by color and size. And then she said the lettuces are over here. And, there's some different vegetables in the middle here. And she basically gave an explanation of how the space was organized. My son, he looked at the picture and when I asked him how it was organized, he was like, it's organized rudely. And I laughed and I asked him to explain that. And he was like, well, this little red pepper just wants to hang with the green peppers, but they don't want him. And he went into this long story, funny story, about how, that one little red pepper wasn't where it belonged. And he's a funny kid. He was, of course, joking. But it explains how his ADHD brain focused on one element of the picture, and his brain kind of took him down a rabbit hole, and he developed a whole story around that. And in the end, he did not really remember the question of how the space was organized. So he didn't execute the task. Where my daughter was able to execute the task. She actually said, it really bothered me that pepper was in the wrong spot. She was like, but you asked how the space was organized, so I answered your question. So she was able to sort of see that little detail, but recalibrate and execute the task at hand, which was to answer the question of how the space was organized. So I'm going to stop sharing now. So that's basically, it's an example of how it's difficult for those of us with ADHD, with, more executive function challenges, to basically execute a task. We tend to get focused on a detail or focused on something that interests our brain, and we're honing in on that. Whereas people with less executive function challenge, they sort of, instead of using their attention like a flashlight and honing in on something small, they're using a floodlight. They're opening their perspective, taking in the entire situation, and figuring out, okay, what am I supposed to do now, given all of this information. So there's a number of ways that we can kind of, with that awareness that people with greater executive function challenge have typically lower situational awareness. With that, there are different things that we can put in place. Some of the things that I personally do, I will establish checkpoints with myself. I will, set aside some priorities for the day. And I set aside checkpoints, every hour where, okay, how am I doing? Have I gone off track? Have I gone down a rabbit hole? For children in school, we can have our children sort of establish those checkpoints for themselves, whether it is entering a space and sort of training them to take that pause and realize, what is it that I have to do here, and try to broaden and take in the entire situation. What am I supposed to pay attention to? What should I be doing at this moment? And sometimes we can ask teachers to be a prompt in that process. Maybe they'll greet the student as they come in, and they'll say, okay, Johnny, what are you supposed to be doing? What are your next steps? We're happy to have you in school. What are your next steps? So there's different ways that we might be able to incorporate that pause for ourselves, and sort of remind us to broaden that attentional floodlight, kind of create a floodlight, and be taking in more information. So I hope this was informative for you today, and I will be talking with you guys tomorrow and a Facebook Live, a little bit about leaning into the law. So I'm excited about that, and I hope you guys have a great day. Bye-bye.